Adenike Halade was the kind of woman people described with a soft smile and an approving nod. The kind of woman pastors mentioned when preaching about kindness. She was in her early 40s, elegant in a quiet way, her outfits always neatly ironed, her makeup always on point. Her voice was never raised, and her hands always seemed to be reaching out to carry a neighbor's baby, to hand a bowl of rice to a grieving widow, to type up a job application for the security man's cousin. People called her Mama Community. She was the first to show up, the last to leave, and somehow she always knew the exact right thing to say when someone was in pain. Her phone never stopped ringing. But one Thursday afternoon, her 13-year-old daughter, Moron Keji, locked herself in her room and cried like her world had collapsed. And for the first time in her life, Adenike didn't know what to do. She stood outside her room, barefoot, hands trembling. All the wisdom she had dished out to everyone else suddenly vanished. Keji, open the door, she said gently. But the only reply was silence. Keji had always been a quiet child, not moody, not withdrawn, just soft. She moved through life like someone afraid of taking up too much space. She got good grades, didn't complain much, and never gave trouble. Adenike thought of her as the kind of daughter people prayed for. But lately, she had noticed something. Keji's eyes had changed. There was a new heaviness behind them. She no longer burst into the room to share her heart project or the story about her fashion dream. Instead, she disappeared into silence more often. She stopped laughing during evening TV time. She stopped hugging back. Still, Adenike had chalked it up to teenage mood swings. Children change. Hormones do their thing. What she hadn't done, what she had forgotten to do, was ask. Genuinely ask. It took 2 hours of sitting outside her door before Keji finally let her mother in. Adenike stepped inside the dim room. Keji was curled on the bed, face blotchy from crying, holding a pillow like it was her only friend in the world. I'm here now, Adenike whispered, unsure if it meant anything. And then, between sniffles, the story came out. Keji had started her period for the first time, alone, 2 months ago. She had panicked in school when it happened. Her uniform had been stained, and she didn't know what to do. She had gone to the sick bay, but there were no pads. Her mother, the woman everyone ran to for help, had never had that conversation with her. Later, out of desperation, Keji confided in a classmate, one who had always seemed friendly. The girl had comforted her and even given her a spare pad. For a brief moment, Keji felt safe. Until today, that same classmate had loudly announced in class that Keji had blood running down her leg some weeks ago, and laughed about how even her own mother didn't tell her anything. The whole class had laughed. Keji ran out of school and went home without telling anyone. I felt dirty, Keji said quietly, and ashamed. Like, maybe I wasn't important enough for you to notice. Adenike froze. It was as if someone had slapped her soul. Adenike remembered. She remembered that day, 2 months ago, when she had returned from delivering food to a church member who had just had a baby. Keji had hovered around her like she wanted to say something, but Adenike had been tired. She had smiled, kissed her on the head, and said, "Not now, Keji, later." She never asked again. She never noticed the extra long showers, or the subtle stains in the laundry. She had assumed Keji would come to her when she was ready. But Keji had come, and she had been dismissed. I thought I was doing the right thing, Adenike said that night to her husband, Dayo, her voice shaking. I thought I was being a good mother by being a good person. Dayo, a quiet man himself, only nodded. You were helping the world, he said, but you forgot your word lives under this roof. For days after, Katie barely spoke. She wasn't heard. She still answered questions, still helped in the kitchen, but her warmth had disappeared. That subtle glow children have when they feel emotionally safe, it was gone. Adenike tried to overcompensate. She bought new parts. She packed Katie's favorite lunch. She tried to talk about boys, about bodies, about womanhood, but it all felt forced. One night, Katie finally said, Mom, you don't need to buy things. I just needed you to talk to me before it all happened. I just needed to feel like I mattered. That was the night Adenike broke. She locked herself in her bedroom, knelt by the bed, and sobbed like someone grieving a child. She wasn't crying because Keji hated her. She knew her daughter still loved her. She cried because she didn't know how to forgive herself. A week later, Adenike visited her own mother. Mommy, she said, how do you know when you have failed as a parent? Her mother, a widow who had raised 5 children through the storm of the 90s, looked at her with tired eyes. You don't know, she said, not always. But if your child is still opening the door when you knock, you haven't failed. Not completely. Then she added, but don't hide behind guilt. Let it change you. So, Adenike tried something new. She stopped trying to be perfect. She began walking with Keji in the evenings, saying nothing at first, just being present. She started journaling and left little notes on Keji's pillow. Funny ones, sometimes clumsy ones. Notes like, can we have a mommy-daughter spa day? You are growing up fast. I noticed your voice got sharper last week. Hormones maybe, or just my cooking. Keji began to smile again. One day, she walked into the kitchen and said, Mom, you know, I saw a TikTok video where someone said their mom used napkins. I just had to ask, were pads even invented when you were my age? Adenike burst into laughter. Omo, don't insult my generation like that again, no. They laughed for 2 full minutes. It was the sound of forgiveness blooming. I'm sorry, Adenike said one evening as they folded clothes on Keji's bed. Not just for what I missed, but for thinking being a good person outside was enough. Keji nodded slowly. I forgive you, she said, but you have to forgive yourself too. That's the only way we both move forward. And there it was. The lesson Adenike had spent her whole life preaching finally circled back to her in the form of her own daughter. It surprised people when Adenike stopped running around for everyone. She no longer answered every call. She politely declined being the chairman of planning committee for her community's December carnival. When asked, she simply said, I'm building something at home. Only one woman, her closest friend, understood. You're rebuilding trust, she said, and that takes time. Months passed. Keji blossomed. She grew more confident, more expressive. And Adenike, she learned to sit still, to make space for silence, to ask questions without assuming, to love not just through giving, but through noticing. And though she still helped people, she never forgot her most sacred duty again. being emotionally present at home. Forgiveness came slowly, but it came. Not through a grand gesture, not through a sermon, but through quiet dinners, soft hugs, late night laughter, time with her daughter, and the courage to say, I thought I was a good person, but I forgot to be a good mother. And now I'm choosing to be both. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is the one in the mirror, because when the world applauds your kindness, we can forget to check where your heart truly lives. This story isn't about a bad mother, it's about a human one. A woman who learned that love must be present, not just generous. A woman wouldn't know she needed forgiveness until she looked into her daughter's tearful eyes and saw the truth that you can pour into the world and still let your whole home go dry. But healing begins the moment you stop hiding behind guilt and start choosing to be present again. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.